The storm and the stranger. The storm came without warning, turning the mountain road into a treacherous ribbon of rain and wind. Victoria Chen gripped the steering wheel of her Tesla, watching the warning lights blink red across the dashboard. As CEO of Apex Industries, she was used to controlling every variable, planning for every contingency. But nature didn't care about her board meeting in Seattle or her meticulously planned schedule. The car sputtered once, twice, then coasted to a stop on the shoulder just outside the small town of Pine Ridge. Victoria stared through the rain-streaked windshield at the towering evergreens that seemed to close in around her. No cell service. Of course. She was still glaring at her useless phone when headlights appeared through the downpour. A weathered pickup truck pulled up behind her, and a tall figure emerged from the driver's seat. Through the rain, she could make out broad shoulders, work boots, and a baseball cap pulled low against the storm. "You okay there?" The man's voice carried over the rain as he approached her window. Victoria rolled it down slightly, immediately regretting it as water splashed inside. "I'm fine. Just waiting for a tow truck." He glanced at her car, then at the storm raging around them. "Tesla, huh? These mountain storms can flood the electrical systems pretty good." Without waiting for permission, he walked to her hood. "Mind if I take a look?" Every instinct told Victoria to say no. She didn't accept help from strangers, especially not on deserted mountain roads. But something about his calm demeanor, the way he moved with quiet confidence instead of urgency, made her hesitate. "I suppose," she said, stepping out into the rain with her designer umbrella. The man, she still didn't know his name, popped the hood and examined the engine with practiced ease. "Just as I thought." Water got into the relay box. He produced a small tool from his pocket and made a few quick adjustments. "Should get you to town, at least." The car chirped to life, dashboard lights blinking back to normal. Victoria stared in amazement. "How did you?" "Used to be a mechanic," he said simply, closing the hood. "Before." He trailed off, something shadowing his expression. "Anyway, Pine Ridge is just 5 miles ahead. Tommy's garage can give it a proper look if you want." Victoria fumbled for her purse. "Let me pay you for your time." He was already walking back to his truck. "No need. Just glad you're safe." He paused at his door, a hint of a smile on his weathered face. "Next time you're driving through the mountains, maybe keep some practical shoes in the car." Victoria looked down at her designer heels, now soaked and muddy, and felt heat rise to her cheeks. Before she could respond, he was gone, red taillights disappearing into the storm. She sat in her car for a long moment, engine running, watching the empty road. Something about the encounter had shaken her in a way that had nothing to do with the storm. The man had helped her without expecting anything in return, without even giving his name. In her world of calculated exchanges and hidden agendas, such simple kindness felt almost foreign. As she drove toward Pine Ridge, Victoria Chen had no idea that the stranger with gentle hands and kind eyes was about to become the most important person in her carefully controlled life. She didn't know his name was Marcus Rivera, that he was a single father still grieving his late wife, or that in 3 days, she would be standing on his doorstep with an offer that would change both their lives forever. All she knew was that for the first time in years, someone had helped her without wanting anything in return. And that small act of grace had cracked something open inside her that she'd kept locked away for far too long. The impossible proposal. 3 days after the storm, Victoria stood in her corner office on the 47th floor of the Apex Industries tower, staring at the legal document that threatened to destroy everything she'd built. Her father's final surprise, hidden in the depths of his will like a ticking time bomb. In order to maintain control of Apex Industries, the successor must demonstrate stability and commitment to family values by entering into a legally binding marriage within 60 days of the reading of this will. A marriage clause. It sounded medieval, but her father's lawyers assured her it was perfectly legal within the context of a family trust. The board was already circling like vultures, questioning her leadership, her dedication to the company's family values. She had 57 days left. Victoria closed her eyes and saw rain-soaked mountains, gentle hands fixing her car, a man who'd helped without asking for anything in return. Marcus Rivera. Her private investigator had found him easily enough, single father, widower, respected mechanic who'd taken over his late father-in-law's garage. No criminal record, no scandals, no interest in the corporate world that consumed her life. Perfect. The address led her to a modest two-story house on the outskirts of Pine Ridge, where wind chimes played soft melodies on the front porch and a tire swing hung from an old oak tree. Victoria felt like an alien in her tailored suit and heels, but she climbed the steps and knocked anyway. The door opened, and there he was. Marcus looked different in the afternoon sunlight, younger somehow, with paint-stained fingers and sawdust in his dark hair. Recognition flickered in his brown eyes, followed quickly by confusion. "Tesla lady," he said with a small smile. "Don't tell me you broke down again." "No, I..." Victoria took a breath. "I need to talk to you. Privately." He glanced over his shoulder, where she could hear a child's laughter echoing from somewhere inside the house. "Sure. Come in." The living room was warm and lived in, with crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator and a pair of small sneakers kicked off by the door. A children's book lay open on the coffee table next to a mug of cold coffee. This was a home, Victoria realized, not just a house. "I'm Marcus Rivera, by the way," he said, settling into a worn armchair. "And you are?" "Victoria Chen, CEO of Apex Industries." She perched on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "What I'm about to tell you will sound insane, but I need you to hear me out completely." Marcus leaned back, his expression curious but cautious. "Okay. My father passed away last month. In his will, he included a clause requiring me to be married within 60 days or lose control of my company." The words came out in a rush. "I need a marriage that looks legitimate on paper but won't complicate my life or yours. Someone outside my world, someone who won't use it for leverage." Marcus blinked slowly. "And you think that someone is me? You helped me without asking for anything. That's rare in my experience." Victoria met his gaze steadily. "I've had you investigated." His expression hardened. "You what?" "I'm thorough, not reckless. I wouldn't come to you if I didn't believe you could walk away from this unharmed." She pulled out a folder. 6 months. Full legal documentation, financial compensation, complete privacy. Your daughter wouldn't need to know the truth." "My daughter?" Marcus stood abruptly. "You leave Sophia out of this. She wouldn't be involved. As far as anyone knows, it's a private relationship between adults who met and married quickly." Victoria's voice softened. "I would never put a child at risk." Marcus walked to the window, staring out at the tire swaying in the breeze. "My wife died 2 years ago," he said quietly. "I swore I wouldn't bring chaos into Sophia's world. This isn't chaos. It's controlled, temporary, beneficial for both of us." Victoria stood, moving closer but not too close. "I'm offering you enough money to secure Sophia's future. College fund, whatever she needs. And what do you get out of it besides keeping your company?" Victoria hesitated. "A chance to prove I can play by my father's rules without sacrificing who I am." Marcus turned back to her, studying her face with those perceptive brown eyes. She wondered what he saw there, the CEO mask she wore so well, or the vulnerability she tried so hard to hide. "I need time to think," he said finally. "Of course. But Marcus." She paused at the door. "I know this sounds like I'm using you. Maybe I am. But I'd rather trust a decent man I barely know than the sharks in my own world." As Victoria drove back to Seattle, she couldn't shake the image of that warm, lived-in house, of a man who put his daughter's well-being above everything else. She'd made her offer based on logic and necessity, but something deeper was stirring, a longing for the kind of authentic life she saw in Marcus Rivera's home. She didn't know yet that Marcus would say yes, driven by his own desperate need to provide for Sophia. She didn't know that their contract marriage would become something neither of them expected. And she certainly didn't know that in trying to save her company, she was about to discover what it truly meant to save herself. The contract and the heart. 2 weeks later, Victoria stood in her Seattle penthouse, watching Marcus carry a small suitcase up the stairs to the guest room. Sophia skipped behind him, clutching a stuffed elephant and chattering excitedly about the view of the city from the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Daddy, look! You can see the whole world from here." The 7-year-old pressed her nose against the glass, her breath fogging the surface. Victoria felt a strange tightness in her chest watching them. She'd prepared the guest suite with clinical efficiency, comfortable bed, private bathroom, everything Marcus might need for their arrangement. But she hadn't prepared for the reality of sharing her space with a child's laughter and wonder. "Victoria." Marcus appeared in the doorway, Sophia now distracted by exploring her new room next door. "We should talk about ground rules." They sat at her marble kitchen island, the marriage certificate between them like a bridge neither was sure they could cross. The ceremony had been brief, clinical, a courthouse affair with 2 witnesses Victoria had hired for the occasion. But now, in the quiet of her home, the reality of what they'd done settled around them. "Sophia thinks we're married because we fell in love," Marcus said quietly. "I told her sometimes adults know quickly when they've found someone special." Victoria nodded. "What does she know about the arrangement?" "Nothing. And it stays that way." His voice was firm. "She's been through enough changes in her short life." "Of course." Victoria found herself watching Sophia through the doorway, marveling at how the child's presence had already transformed the sterile space. Crayons and picture books were scattered across the coffee table, and Sophia's purple jacket hung on a chair like a splash of color in Victoria's monochrome world. The first few days were awkward, all of them learning to navigate this strange new dynamic. Victoria left early for work and returned late, giving Marcus and Sophia space to settle in. But gradually, she found herself lingering over morning coffee, drawn by Sophia's endless questions and Marcus's patient answers. "Why do you wear those fancy clothes every day?" Sophia asked one morning, perched on a kitchen stool as Victoria prepared for another day of board meetings. "Because people expect me to look professional," Victoria replied, adjusting her blazer. "But don't your feet hurt in those shoes?" Victoria glanced down at her stilettos, then at Sophia's colorful sneakers with cartoon characters on them. "Sometimes." "Then why don't you wear comfortable shoes like Daddy?" The question was innocent, but it lodged itself in Victoria's mind throughout the day. Why didn't she wear comfortable shoes? When had she stopped prioritizing her own comfort for the sake of others' expectations? That evening, she found Marcus in the kitchen, teaching Sophia to make pancakes. Flour dusted the countertops, and Sophia had batter in her hair, but both of them were laughing. "Room for one more chef?" Victoria asked, surprising herself. Marcus looked up, flour handprint on his dark shirt. Warning: Sophia's version of cooking involves more mess than actual food. "I'm a good cook," Sophia protested, waving her spatula dramatically and sending more batter flying. Victoria found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. She rolled up her sleeves and joined them, letting Sophia teach her the proper way to flip pancakes, which apparently involved a lot of dramatic wrist action and enthusiastic commentary. As the weeks passed, the artificial boundaries between them began to blur. Victoria started working from home more often, claiming it was more efficient. Marcus began cooking dinner for all 3 of them, saying it was easier than making separate meals. Sophia insisted on goodnight hugs from both her parents, and Victoria found herself looking forward to those brief moments of sweetness more than any business victory. One evening, after Sophia had gone to bed, Victoria and Marcus sat on the balcony overlooking the city lights. The silence between them had grown comfortable, no longer strained with the weight of their arrangement. "She's remarkable," Victoria said, watching the stars appear one by one. "Sophia, I mean. You've raised an incredible daughter." Marcus's expression softened. "She's the best thing Maria and I ever did together." He paused. "Thank you for being so patient with her. I know this wasn't part of our deal." Victoria turned to look at him, this man who had somehow become part of her daily life, part of her thoughts, part of something she couldn't quite name. "Marcus, I need to tell you something." He waited, his brown eyes reflecting the city lights. "This arrangement, it's not feeling like an arrangement anymore. At least not for me." The admission hung between them like a fragile bridge. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and Victoria felt her heart hammering against her ribs. "For me either," he said finally, his voice soft. "I keep forgetting this is supposed to be temporary." They were leaning closer now, the space between them charged with possibility. But before either could close the distance, Sophia's voice called from inside. "Daddy? I had a bad dream." The moment shattered, and they sprang apart. Marcus went to comfort his daughter, leaving Victoria alone on the balcony with the city spread out below her and her heart racing with the realization that somewhere along the way, she'd stopped pretending to be in love with Marcus Rivera. She'd actually fallen for him. And that changed everything. When everything falls apart. The photograph on the front page of the Seattle Business Journal made Victoria's blood run cold. There she was, caught by a telephoto lens as she laughed at something Marcus had said, Sophia balanced on his shoulders at the Pike Place Market. The headline read, "Ice Queen Melts, Apex CEO's Secret Family Life Exposed." Victoria's hands trembled as she read the article in her office, her coffee growing cold on the mahogany desk. The reporter had done their homework, details about the marriage, speculation about a whirlwind romance, questions about Victoria's sudden transformation from workaholic to family woman. But it was the final paragraph that made her stomach drop. Sources close to the Apex board suggest concerns about CEO Victoria Chen's recent behavior, with some questioning whether her new domestic situation has compromised her focus on the billion-dollar merger talks with Hartman Industries. The merger. The deal that would secure Apex's future and prove to the board that she could lead the company into the next decade. The deal that required absolute focus and discretion, neither of which she apparently possessed anymore. Her phone buzzed with text after text from board members, reporters, business contacts. The careful privacy she'd built around her arrangement with Marcus was crumbling in real time. She was still staring at the newspaper when Marcus appeared in her office doorway, Sophia's hand clasped in his. They'd come to take her to lunch, as had become their Wednesday tradition. "Victoria?" Marcus saw her expression immediately. "What's wrong?" She held up the newspaper, watching his face change as he scanned the headline. Sophia, oblivious to the tension, bounced over to examine the family photos on Victoria's desk. "Look, Daddy. There's the picture from when we went to the zoo." Sophia pointed to a framed photo Victoria had added just last week, the three of them laughing as a monkey stole Marcus's hat. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Sophia, honey, can you wait in the reception area? Ask Janet for some of those cookies she keeps in her desk." Once Sophia skipped out, Marcus closed the office door. "How bad is this?" "Bad." Victoria set down the paper with shaking hands. "The board is already questioning my judgment. If they think this marriage is affecting my ability to lead, then we end it." The words came out flat, final. "We always knew this was temporary." Victoria looked up at him sharply. "Marcus. No, you were right from the beginning. This is about your company, your future. I shouldn't have let us get so." He ran a hand through his hair. "I shouldn't have let Sophia get so attached." The word "attached" hung between them like an accusation. Victoria felt something crack inside her chest. "Is that what you think this is? Attachment?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. Marcus met her eyes, and she saw something there that looked like grief. I think we both forgot what this was supposed to be. But that little girl out there, she's my priority. She's already lost one mother. I won't let her go through that again because we got confused about what we were doing. Victoria stood abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked the city. Down below, life continued, people going to lunch, traffic moving in orderly patterns, the world spinning on as her carefully constructed life fell apart. So that's it. You're leaving. We're leaving. Tonight. Marcus's voice was steady, but she could hear the cost of that steadiness. I'll pack our things while Sophia's at school. It'll be easier if we're gone when she gets home. Without saying goodbye. Victoria spun around. Marcus, she'll be devastated. She'll be more devastated if this drags out. Kids are resilient. She'll adjust. Victoria stared at him, this man who had somehow become the center of her world without her even realizing it. And what about us? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. There is no us, Victoria. There never was. That was the deal. He walked toward the door, then paused without turning around. I'll have my lawyer contact yours about the dissolution. The terms were clear, 6 months or whenever you no longer needed the arrangement. After he left, Victoria sank into her chair, the newspaper photo staring up at her mockingly. She'd gotten exactly what she'd asked for, a temporary marriage to save her company. The board would approve of her decisive action to end the distraction. The merger talks could proceed without scandal. So why did victory feel like the most devastating loss of her life? That evening, Victoria came home to a penthouse that felt cavernous in its emptiness. The crayons were gone from the coffee table. Sophia's purple jacket no longer hung on the chair. The guest room looked like a hotel suite again, sterile, impersonal, cold. On the kitchen counter, Marcus had left the marriage certificate and a brief note, "Thank you for giving Sophia and me a glimpse of a different kind of life. I hope you find what you're really looking for. M." Victoria crumpled the note in her fist and let the tears come, tears she hadn't allowed herself to shed since her father died, tears for the family she'd had for just a few precious weeks, tears for the man who'd walked away because he thought he was protecting his daughter. But mostly, she cried for herself, for the woman who had finally learned what love felt like, only to discover she was too late to fight for it. The Ice Queen had melted, just as the newspapers said. But instead of finding warmth, she'd discovered that sometimes thawing out only revealed how cold and empty you'd been all along. The choice that changes everything. 3 weeks after Marcus and Sophia left, Victoria sat in the Apex Industries boardroom, staring at the merger contract that represented everything she'd worked for. Heartwarming Industries' acquisition would make Apex one of the largest biotech companies in the world. The board members around the mahogany table wore satisfied smiles, finally seeing the focused, ruthless CEO they'd always wanted. "Congratulations, Victoria," said board chairman Robert Hayes. "Your father would be proud. You've proven that you can put the company first, just as he always did." Victoria signed her name with a steady hand, but the victory felt hollow. She'd gotten her company back, secured her legacy, satisfied the board's demands. So why did she feel like she'd lost everything that mattered? The answer came that evening when she found Sophia's drawing tucked inside a book on her coffee table, a crayon sketch of 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, with "My Family" written in purple letters across the top. Victoria stared at the drawing until her vision blurred. When was the last time anyone had drawn her into their family? When was the last time she'd felt like she belonged somewhere, not because of her position or her wealth, but simply because someone loved her? Her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant, "The Heartwarming celebration dinner is tomorrow at 8. Shall I confirm your attendance?" Victoria looked around her empty penthouse, the awards on the walls, the city lights glittering below, the silence that had once felt like success but now felt like a prison. She typed back, "Cancel it. I have somewhere else to be." The drive to Pine Ridge took 2 hours, but Victoria barely noticed the time. She'd traded her business suit for jeans and a sweater, her heels for the comfortable flats she'd bought weeks ago but never worn. Her hands shook as she turned onto Marcus's street, rehearsing what she would say. The house looked the same, but somehow smaller in the gathering dusk. Marcus's truck sat in the driveway, a good sign. Victoria took a deep breath and knocked on the door. Marcus answered, his expression cycling through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been hope before settling into careful neutrality. "Victoria. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you. Both of you." She peered past him into the house. "Is Sophia home?" "She's in her room, doing homework." Marcus stepped aside reluctantly. "Come in." The living room felt exactly as it had that first day, warm, lived in, real. Victoria perched on the edge of the couch, the same spot where she'd made her impossible proposal all those weeks ago. "I saw the news about the merger," Marcus said, settling into his chair. "Congratulations." "Thank you." Victoria twisted her hands in her lap. "It's everything I thought I wanted. But it's not what I need." She looked up at him, this man who'd seen through her defenses from the very beginning. "Marcus, I've spent my entire life building walls, protecting myself, putting the company before everything else. I thought that was strength. And now I think real strength is knowing when to tear those walls down." Victoria stood, pacing to the window. "I love you. I love Sophia. I love the life we built together, even if it started as a lie." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Victoria. I know what you're going to say. This is complicated. I'm complicated. But I've been thinking." "Victoria, listen to me." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. "You got what you needed. Your company is safe. The board respects you. That was always the plan. Plans change." Victoria turned to face him. "I'm changing. You changed me. For 3 weeks. What happens when the novelty wears off? When you remember that you're a CEO who belongs in boardrooms, not at school plays and soccer games? Then I'll quit." The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Marcus stared at her in shock. "You'd give up everything you've worked for?" "I'd give up everything I thought I worked for," Victoria corrected. "Marcus, I've been successful my whole life, but I've never been happy. Not until I found you and Sophia." "And what about Sophia?" "She cried for a week after we left. I can't put her through that again if you change your mind." "Then don't." Victoria walked to him, stopping just close enough that he had to look up at her. "Don't put her through it again. Let me stay. Let me be part of this family, really part of it." Marcus searched her face, looking for something she hoped he would find. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to marry you again. For real this time. Not for a company or a contract, but because I love you. Because I want to be Sophia's stepmother. Because I want to build a life with both of you." Before Marcus could respond, small footsteps thundered down the stairs. Sophia appeared in the doorway, her face lighting up like a sunrise. "Victoria." She launched herself into Victoria's arms. "You came back. Daddy said you were too busy with work, but I knew you'd come back." Victoria held the little girl tight, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and feeling something settle into place in her chest. "I'm sorry I left, sweetheart. I made a mistake. Are you staying this time?" Sophia pulled back to look at her with those serious brown eyes so much like her father's. Victoria glanced at Marcus over Sophia's head. He was watching them both with an expression she couldn't quite read. "That depends on your daddy," Victoria said softly. Sophia spun around to face Marcus. "Daddy, she has to stay. She's part of our family now." Marcus stood slowly, closing the distance between them. "Sophia, why don't you go get ready for bed? Victoria and I need to talk." Once they were alone again, Marcus cupped Victoria's face in his hands. Are you sure about this? Really sure? Because if you stay, there's no going back. This is it, the real thing. Victoria leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth she'd missed every day since she'd left. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. What about your company? I'll find a way to balance both. Or I'll step down and find something else. There are other jobs, Marcus. There's only one you, only one Sophia. Marcus studied her for a long moment, then slowly smiled, the same smile that had made her heart race that first day on the mountain road. Okay, he said simply. Okay. Okay, let's do this. For real this time. Victoria kissed him then, pouring all her love and hope and newfound courage into that single moment. When they broke apart, Sophia's voice drifted down from upstairs. Are you staying, Victoria? I saved you a spot in my prayers. Victoria laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep inside her. Yes, sweetheart. I'm staying. And as Marcus wrapped his arms around her and Sophia's delighted giggle echoed through the house, Victoria knew she'd finally found what she'd been searching for all along. Not power or success or control, but something infinitely more precious, a family to love and be loved by in return. 6 months later, Victoria walked down the aisle of the small Pine Ridge church, Sophia as her flower girl and Marcus waiting at the altar with tears in his eyes. This time, when they said their vows, every word was true. This time, when they kissed, it was forever. The newspaper headline the next day read, "Former CEO finds her happy ending," but Victoria didn't see it. She was too busy making pancakes with her husband and daughter, planning their future one messy, wonderful day at a time. She'd learned that sometimes the best contracts were the ones you tore up and rewrote with your heart instead of your head. And sometimes, the most powerful thing a woman could do was not to build walls, but to have the courage to let them fall. The end.